Welcome to Tales by Tochi. These stories are real, unique and exceptional because they the African culture. Don't forget to like, subscribe and turn on post notification because it will mean the whole world to me, and also you will be able to enjoy and learn from these amazing stories. Now let's get right into the story. Brace yourself. The heat inside the lecture hall was unbearable, but Amanda didn't move from her front row seat. Her blouse clung to her back, her hands were damp with sweat, and yet her eyes were locked on the door waiting. Something about today felt different. Word had spread across the campus like wildfire. Christopher Dyke, the youngest tech billionaire in Nigeria, was coming to speak at the university. 4 days, students buzzed with excitement, especially the girls who only knew him from magazine covers and Instagram posts. Amanda, however, was different. She wasn't the type to chase men, and certainly not men like him, ruthless, wealthy, and untouchably elite. But today something tugged at her. Maybe it was the exhaustion from schoolwork or the loneliness of being a first-year student in a big city, but whatever it was, it pulled her to that seat, front and center, makeup barely done, hair tied in a simple bun. She didn't expect anything life-changing, until the door opened and he walked in. He entered with the slow confidence of a man who had the world in his palm. Tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes that scanned the room like a king surveying his subjects, Christopher wore a navy blue suit that hugged his physique perfectly. His presence silenced the hall. The girls leaned in, some gasped. Even the lecturers smiled wider than usual. Amanda sat frozen, watching as he approached the podium. His voice was deep and steady, laced with intelligence and purpose. He spoke about innovation, perseverance, and the importance of dreaming big. But somewhere between his motivational quotes and witty tech jokes, his eyes found her. For a moment she thought she imagined it, until it happened again. And again. Each time his gaze swept the room, it paused ever so slightly on her. Her heart began to race. Her breathing shifted. She straightened her posture and tried to listen, but her thoughts were now louder than his voice. Was he really looking at me? She wondered, gripping her pen tightly. She didn't know then, but that single look would be the beginning of a story that would one day ruin her. After the talk ended and applause echoed across the hall, students rushed to the stage, eager to shake his hand or take selfies. Amanda remained seated, unsure whether to follow or flee. As the crowd thinned, she stood up slowly and turned to leave, when she heard his voice behind her. "Excuse me," he said gently, and her heart nearly stopped. She turned around, and there he was, standing so close she could smell the rich scent of his cologne. "You asked a very interesting question during the Q&A, he said, although she hadn't actually spoken. Before she could correct him, he continued, "What's your name?" Her lips parted. "Amanda," she whispered. He smiled, pulling a sleek business card from his inner pocket. "Amanda, I'd like to talk to you more sometime. You have a sharp mind." "I appreciate that." And just like that he walked away. She stared at the card in her hand, stunned, the world spinning around her. Amanda didn't know what the future held, but at that moment she believed, naively, dangerously, that she had just stepped into a fairy tale. Amanda sat in her tiny hostel room 2 days later, staring at the business card like it was made of gold. Her roommates had gushed and speculated endlessly. "Girl, that man is into you," one said. Another laughed, "You better be careful, oh, billionaires don't just give out cards for fun." Amanda wasn't sure what to believe. The card had no social media handle, just a name, a private number, and a bold logo embossed in gold, Dyke Tech Global. She hadn't dared to call. Something in her felt unworthy, unsure if it was all a mistake or if he gave out cards to every girl who caught his eye. But on a quiet Friday afternoon, as she struggled with a biology assignment, a sleek black Mercedes pulled up outside her hostel gate. A driver stepped out, smartly dressed in a suit, holding a placard with one word written in neat handwriting, "Amanda." The other girls rushed to the window. Amanda's heart jumped. She opened the door slowly, the breeze catching the edge of her scarf. The driver bowed slightly and said, "Boss would like to see you." The ride to his place was like stepping through a portal into another world. The seats were leather, the air fresh and perfumed, and the driver said little. Amanda's hands trembled in her lap. She wasn't sure if she was scared or thrilled or both. She arrived at a penthouse overlooking the water, glass walls, a rooftop pool, and chandeliers that looked like falling stars. She stepped into a room that smelled of wealth and control. Christopher was waiting, no suit this time, just a black t-shirt that hugged his muscular frame and wine glass in hand. "You came," he said, smiling. "I was hoping you would." She nodded, unable to form words. He showed her around, casually mentioning imported art, deals he was negotiating in Dubai, a charity he was funding, things far above her world. And yet, when he looked at her, she felt like the most important person in the room. They talked for hours. About her dreams, her parents, how she wanted to be a doctor to help people. He listened, held her hand gently when she got emotional and said, "You're not like other girls. You have something special." Her heart swelled. No one had ever made her feel so seen, so valued. By the time the sky turned dark, Amanda was no longer afraid. It was like something in her shifted. He served her food, real food, not hostile noodles or cafeteria rice, and wine she could barely pronounce. Then, as the night deepened, he kissed her for the first time. Softly, slowly, like she was something precious. She didn't resist. His arms wrapped around her and everything else disappeared. She gave him her virginity that night, not because she felt pressured, but because he made her feel like she belonged. He whispered, "You're safe with me. I won't let anything happen to you." When she closed her eyes in his bed, her head resting against his chest, she believed those words. She didn't know that she had just crossed the line she'd never come back from. The girl who walked into that penthouse was not the same girl who would walk out. Christopher became the center of Amanda's universe. He called her every morning with, "Good morning, my future wife," and ended every night with, "Sleep well, baby. I'm proud of you." Her friends noticed the glow on her face, the designer shoes she now wore to lectures, the sudden switch from hostile food to daily deliveries from expensive restaurants. But Amanda wasn't flaunting it. She wasn't showing off. She was simply falling, fast and deep, into the illusion he built around her. Every word he said became gospel. "Don't stress yourself too much about school, I'll take care of you when you graduate. One day you'll be carrying my last name and we'll laugh at all these struggles. You're my peace, Amanda. You're different." He took her on trips to Abuja and Ghana, bought her a necklace that cost more than her father's annual income, and showed her off to business associates as someone important to me. She didn't ask questions. She didn't doubt him. Why would she? Love, when it's new and full of promise, blinds more deeply than darkness. But beneath all the romance, Amanda was quietly reshaping herself to be everything he wanted. She stopped attending fellowship on campus because he once said, "Church girls can be too dramatic." She cut off her male friends because he said he didn't like competition. She started dressing differently, more elegant, less youthful, because he once joked that university girls dressed like they're still in high school. Slowly, Amanda erased pieces of herself to fit into the picture he painted. And he rewarded her obedience with more affection, more money, more attention. Her parents noticed she was always away from school, but when she told them she was dating a billionaire, her mother warned her, "Don't play with fire, Amanda." Her father said nothing, only sighed. But Amanda wasn't listening. She was busy living a dream she never expected to have. She thought she had struck gold, that somehow, despite all odds, she had been chosen by a man who could have anyone, but chose her. And so, when she missed her period for the first time, Amanda didn't panic. She smiled. She imagined telling him the news, watching his face light up, hearing him say, "We're going to be parents." She held her stomach in the mirror and whispered, "You're going to have the best life." But when she told Christopher over dinner, the air in the room shifted. His smile faded. He leaned back, exhaled heavily and rubbed his temples. "Amanda, not now," he said quietly. "We're not ready." Her heart skipped. "But I thought, you said you wanted a family." He looked at her sternly. "Yes, but not while you're still in school. You need to graduate. We need stability. I have a board meeting next month. This is not the time." She tried to protest, but he shook his head. "Don't ruin what we have. Let me take care of this." And just like that, the fairy tale started to fracture. Amanda sat on the examination table, legs cold, heart shattered. The private clinic was spotless, the staff efficient, but she felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff with no parachute. Christopher sat beside her, holding her hand, whispering, "It's okay. It's just one sacrifice. Our time will come." But his words didn't match the look in his eyes, calm, distant, focused on getting this problem out of the way. Amanda didn't want to do it. Every instinct in her body screamed to keep the baby. But he said the world would laugh at her. A billionaire's baby mama while still in year one? You know how blogs are. It'll destroy your future. The guilt overwhelmed her. Was she being selfish? Maybe he was right. Maybe love sometimes meant making the hard decisions. The nurse injected her with something cold. The room started spinning. She reached out, gripped his arm and whispered, "Will you still love me after this?" He kissed her forehead and said, "Always." The pain afterward was unlike anything she'd ever felt. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional, spiritual. She cried for days. She couldn't sleep. She avoided mirrors. She stopped picking calls. Her friends assumed she was just lovesick. No one knew the storm inside her. She started writing letters to the baby she never got to hold. She hid them in her journal, folded neatly like small paper graves. Every time Christopher came around, he would act like everything was fine. He'd take her shopping, book massages, buy her new things. "Let's not dwell on the past," he'd say. "We have a bright future ahead." Amanda tried to smile. She tried to believe him. But the sparkle in her eyes had started to fade. The warmth in her laughter began to dim. A piece of her had died in that clinic, and no amount of perfume or product could cover the scent of grief. Weeks passed and she pretended to move on. She tried to catch up with her lectures, forced herself to attend group tutorials, but the joy of learning medicine was gone. Everything reminded her of what she lost. Her body didn't feel like her own anymore. She felt used. Hollow. Christopher called less frequently now. He was busy with investors, or traveling out of the country. But each time he did call, she clung to his voice like oxygen. "Don't leave me," she once cried over the phone. He replied calmly, "I'm here. I'll always be here." She didn't realize yet that she was already alone. Amanda thought the worst was behind her. She believed the first abortion would be the only one she'd have to carry for love. But pain, when left untreated, doesn't heal. It multiplies. Just 2 months after the first, it happened again. The familiar signs came first: nausea, dizziness, that flutter in her chest when she realized her period hadn't come. She stared at the pregnancy test in the bathroom of her hostel, her heart pounding like a war drum. Positive. Again. This time she didn't even cry. She sat on the edge of the tub, staring at the wall, numb. That night she texted Christopher. The message was simple: "We need to talk." He called instantly, his voice sharper than usual. "Again?" he asked, as if she had deliberately gotten pregnant to spite him. "Amanda, we just went through this. You know I love you, but this is reckless. You're not being careful." She bit her tongue, the tears finally spilling. "Chris, I want to keep this one. Please. I feel like I'm losing myself. I want to feel whole again." He scoffed. "You're too emotional. We can't have this conversation over the phone. I'll send the driver tomorrow." True to his word, the car arrived the next day, but the man who met her at the clinic wasn't the same man who had kissed her forehead and whispered promises during the first time. This man was distant, frustrated, more concerned about being caught than about her well-being. Amanda felt like a criminal walking into that clinic. As she lay on the table again, tears streaming down her cheeks, she whispered to the child in her womb, "I'm sorry," again. The pain afterward was worse. Her body rebelled. She bled more than usual. The nurse warned her, "Your womb is fragile now. Be careful." Amanda nodded without processing the words. In her heart, she was already broken beyond recognition. Christopher didn't visit for 2 weeks after that. He called briefly to ask if she was healing, then switched the topic to a business trip in London. Amanda didn't protest. She just lay in her bed and stared at the ceiling, trying to remember who she was before him. The girl who once wanted to build a hospital for her community was now skipping classes, battling silent panic attacks, and hiding the scars of her sacrifices. Her parents noticed her withdrawal during phone calls, but she smiled through the sadness and assured them everything was fine. "Just school stress," she would say. But nothing was fine. The relationship had started as a fairy tale, but Amanda now lived in a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. And still, despite all the pain, she stayed, because he said he loved her. Because he said he had a plan for them. Because part of her still believed that maybe, just maybe, if she held on long enough, he would finally choose her. Amanda should have known better. By the third time she found herself holding a pregnancy test, she didn't scream or cry. She simply stared at it like it was a mirror reflecting every poor decision she'd made in the last year. She didn't even tell Christopher immediately. She kept it to herself for 4 days, during which she talked to the baby growing inside her, even named it. She'd rub her stomach gently and whisper, "You're the one I'll keep. I promise." There was something different about this pregnancy. Maybe it was her desperation to feel whole again, or maybe it was because she was tired of being a graveyard for the children he never wanted. But something inside her was screaming that this one had to stay. Finally, she texted him and asked if they could talk. He responded an hour later, "Come over. Tomorrow." He was lounging on his leather couch with a glass of brandy in hand when she walked in. She told him everything, how she felt different, how she couldn't go through it again, how she'd do whatever it took to make it work. Christopher didn't raise his voice. He simply placed his drink down and said, "Amanda, you're not listening. I told you the last time, This isn't the right time. You're in year 2 now. You can't afford a scandal. And neither can I. She knelt in front of him, begging. Please, I'll drop out of school if that's what it takes. I'll keep it quiet. You won't have to do anything. His face darkened. That's not how this works. She looked up at him with bloodshot eyes. Then what am I to you? Am I just a body you use when you're lonely? He walked past her, picked up his phone and said, You're acting like a child. I'm sending the doctor now. Be ready. Amanda went through with it again. And again the world didn't stop spinning. People still posted selfies. Lecturers still taught classes. Life moved on like nothing had happened. Only this time, something inside Amanda hardened. The pain didn't fade, it evolved. Her womb felt like a war zone. Her mind a battlefield. The nurse's words echoed louder, Your womb is fragile now. But what scared her more was how numb she was becoming. She no longer cried when it was over. She just lay there, hollow, robotic, allowing the man who said he loved her to kill parts of her over and over again. Yet she stayed. Because she thought if she left, she'd be leaving the only person who had ever made her feel special. And if that was taken from her, what would she have left? Amanda's life began to unravel at a pace even she couldn't control. She no longer recognized the girl in the mirror. Her eyes were empty, her laughter forced, and her body frail. She skipped lectures for weeks. Professors began to notice her absence, and one even called her out during a tutorial, asking if she still wanted to be a doctor. But Amanda wasn't thinking about medicine anymore. She was too busy surviving heartbreak. Her world now existed in 2 dimensions. The hours she spent staring at her phone, waiting for Christopher's name to appear on the screen, and the hours she spent wishing she had never met him. He had become distant, rarely answering her calls, and when he did, he was curt, irritated, distracted. Amanda, you need to understand I'm running a company, he snapped once. I don't have time for mood swings. But they weren't mood swings. They were cries for help. She began losing weight rapidly. Her skin lost its glow. She started avoiding her hostile mates, afraid they'd see through her broken smile. Her roommates whispered about her at night. She looks sick. I think she's depressed. Isn't she the one dating that billionaire? Amanda heard them but didn't have the energy to explain. What would she say? That the billionaire they envied had turned her into a funeral home for unborn children? That he held her heart in his hand only to crush it with every lie he told? She began writing again, long letters she never sent. Letters to herself. Letters to her future. Letters to the children she lost. I wanted you, she wrote in one. I begged for you. But love wouldn't let me keep you. The pages soaked with tears, tucked under her mattress like tombstones no one could visit. And still she waited for him. Every call, every text, every ping on her phone sent a jolt through her. When he finally texted, it was to say he had to fly to South Africa for a merger. We'll talk when I get back. But weeks passed and he never returned her calls. Amanda began to wonder if he was already seeing someone else. The thought made her stomach churn, but she buried it under denial. He loves me, she told herself. He's just busy. She didn't realize that while she was grieving alone in the shadows, Christopher had already started looking elsewhere. And he was looking close. Too close. In fact, Amanda had no idea that the girl who would replace her was living under the same roof, smiling, laughing, and calling her sister. Amanda's 3rd abortion wasn't planned. It happened almost mechanically, like a script she had come to memorize. The symptoms were the same. The missed period, the tightness in her lower belly, the surge of hope she tried to suppress. At first, she convinced herself she wouldn't tell him. She would keep the child. Run away maybe. Find work. Do anything. But the weight of it, carrying the child of a man who still had her heart but not her name, crushed her resolve. Christopher hadn't spoken to her in nearly 2 weeks when she sent the message, I think it's happening again. The reply came minutes later, handle it. That was all he wrote. No concern, no reassurance. Just cold, commanding detachment. She stared at the screen, blinking back the sting in her eyes. Something about those 2 words confirmed what she had tried to deny. He no longer saw her as a person. Just a problem he could delegate. This time Amanda didn't go to his clinic. She couldn't stomach the sterile walls, the fake smiles, the pitiful looks. Instead, she found a cheaper one near her campus. The doctor, an older woman, asked too many questions. You're young. You should be careful. Amanda forced a nod and smiled faintly, but inside she was screaming. As the procedure began, she didn't cry. She didn't flinch. Her body had learned to accept pain as normal. What hurt the most wasn't the procedure, it was the silence afterward. No flowers. No call. No visit. Just an empty phone and an even emptier womb. And when the fourth pregnancy came only 6 months later, it was as if her body had given up entirely. The pregnancy lasted barely 5 weeks. Her body rejected it before she could even process the idea of keeping it. She woke up one morning drenched in blood, writhing in pain on the floor. She was rushed to the campus clinic, and the doctor said she was lucky she hadn't bled out. Her recovery was slow and lonely. The doctor told her quietly, "You've damaged your womb. You may never carry a pregnancy to term again." Amanda didn't react. The words floated in her ears like a death sentence she had already prepared for. That night, she lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, remembering every time Christopher had told her, "Not now." She remembered each promise, each kiss, each night he held her and said she was his future. And now she had no future. Just a fragile womb and a fractured soul. The girls in her hostel noticed she didn't talk anymore. She barely ate, and when she did, it was crackers and water. Her grades were in shambles, her eyes sunken, her walk sluggish. She no longer checked her phone obsessively. There was no point. She knew what she had become: disposable. Used. Forgotten. And still, even in the silence, a part of her whispered his name at night. Because loving him had become a habit her heart didn't know how to break. It started subtly, little things Amanda could have missed if her spirit wasn't already trained to look for patterns. Christopher's calls had become fewer, but now there were longer pauses between them. When he did call, his tone lacked intimacy. "Just checking in," he would say. "No, I love you. No, I miss you." He used to fly in to see her within hours of a text. Now, even urgent messages earned only vague replies: "We'll talk later." He blamed it on work, an upcoming IPO, investor meetings, board stress. Amanda tried to believe him, but her instincts whispered otherwise. One evening, she gathered the courage to go through the tagged photos on his company's Instagram page. Buried under glossy business events and boardroom shots, she saw her, Linda, her baby sister, 18, bright-eyed, beaming, standing beside Christopher at a foundation gala she didn't even know he sponsored. Her heart dropped into her stomach. Amanda told herself it was just coincidence. Linda had recently moved to Lagos to begin university, and Amanda had even helped her settle in. Christopher knew that. He couldn't. But the signs multiplied. Linda started dressing better, wearing designer pieces Amanda recognized as gifts she once received. She began talking on the phone in hushed tones, smiling at messages, leaving the room quickly whenever Amanda walked in. Then came the late nights. "Where are you going?" Amanda asked once. Linda brushed it off. "Just a small hangout with my classmates." Amanda didn't push, until one night, Linda came home in the same black SUV Amanda used to ride in. She watched from the window, her heart thumping like thunder. The driver opened the door for Linda, who giggled, waved at someone inside, and practically floated into the house. Amanda knew. She just knew. The confrontation didn't happen right away. Amanda stewed in silence for days, trying to convince herself it wasn't true. But the truth always finds a way to scream. Linda left her phone on the table one evening while in the shower. It vibrated. A text from a saved contact. CD read, "You looked stunning tonight. Can't wait to see you in white." Amanda's legs buckled. Her vision blurred. She didn't wait. She stormed into the bathroom and yanked the curtain aside. "Are you sleeping with Christopher?" Linda gasped, wrapping a towel around herself. "What are you talking about?" Amanda shook the phone in her face. "Don't lie to me." Linda stepped back, her eyes wide with guilt. "It just happened. I didn't plan it. He said you two broke up. He said you were unstable." Amanda stood there, unable to breathe. She felt the walls close in. Her baby sister, her own flesh and blood, was now with the man who destroyed her. And she hadn't even seen it coming. Amanda's mind couldn't comprehend the betrayal. It wasn't just that Linda was seeing Christopher, it was the realization that he had chosen her, the younger sister, over Amanda, after everything she had given up for him. She sat in her room that night, lights off, replaying it all in her head. The abortions, the promises, the lies, the nights she cried into her pillow while Linda smiled in her sleep across the room. She remembered telling Linda how much she loved Christopher, how he was the one, how she dreamed of wearing his ring. And all this time Linda had been letting him kiss her with the same lips that once said, "I'd never hurt you, sis." Amanda couldn't tell her parents. Who would believe her? Christopher had money, charm, status. Amanda had nothing now, not even her reputation. She felt dirty, ruined, and worst of all, replaceable. The next time she spoke to Christopher, her voice was calm, too calm. "Why her?" she asked over the phone. There was a pause. Then he replied, because she fits. Amanda blinked. Fits what? My image, he said coldly. She's young, untouched, elegant, not complicated. Amanda felt something in her chest crack. You told me you loved me, she whispered. You said I was your piece. Christopher chuckled. I told you what you needed to hear. You were a phase, Amanda. And now the phase is over. She dropped the phone. Her entire world collapsed. Everything she had endured, the shame, the pain, the blood, it had all been for nothing. He never loved her. Not once. And now he was marrying her sister. Amanda didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply sat still, staring at the wall, while something inside her soul died silently. Days passed in a blur. Her hostel became a coffin. She stopped eating, stopped speaking. Linda, now fully committed to her new role as the billionaire's bride, barely showed remorse. She even dared to ask Amanda, can we move past this? It wasn't personal. Amanda stared at her like she was a stranger. The final blow came in the form of an invitation card, delivered to her door in a cream envelope with golden trimmings. She opened it slowly. Her name wasn't on it, but the names inside cut deeper than a blade. The union of Christopher Dyke and Linda Okoro. The date was in 3 weeks. Amanda held the card against her chest, then slowly tore it in half, piece by piece. Her lips trembled, her eyes blank. That night, she wrote her unborn children's names in a notebook, one after the other. Then, under their names, she wrote, Mommy couldn't protect you, but she'll make sure he never forgets you. Amanda didn't wait for an invitation. She went straight to Christopher's mansion. She had memorized the drive, having made that journey so many times before. But this time, her hands gripped her bag differently. This time, her heart wasn't full of love, it was full of fury and a desperate need for closure. The gates opened without hesitation. The guards still recognized her. In their minds, she was still Madame Amanda. But that title had been stripped from her quietly, violently. When she stepped into the vast living room, the air smelled of expensive candles and betrayal. Christopher emerged from the stairs, phone in hand, shirt half buttoned. He paused at the sight of her. Amanda, he said coolly, like he hadn't ruined her. She stood still, her eyes locking onto his with the kind of emotion that terrified even him. You're marrying my sister, she said. Not a question, just the raw truth. He shrugged. I wasn't going to hide it. I thought you knew. His tone was dismissive, even patronizing. Amanda's fists clenched. How could you do this to me? After everything I gave up for you? After everything you made me believe? He exhaled like she was exhausting him. Amanda, we had a thing. A relationship. It was what it was. She stepped forward. You made me kill our children. He flinched just slightly but recovered quickly. That was your choice. Her voice cracked. Don't you dare say that. You told me we weren't ready. You said you loved me. You said you'd marry me. He cut her off. I said what I had to say to keep things from getting messy. You were emotional, unstable, always crying. That's not the kind of woman I can marry. The words hit her like knives. She staggered back, gasping. You used me. He nodded, unapologetic. And now I'm moving on. Amanda didn't cry. Not in front of him. She walked out of that mansion with her head high, but something inside her broke for the final time. That night, she sat in silence in her dark room, her mind playing his words over and over like a cursed song. You were emotional. Unstable. Not the kind of woman I can marry. Her journal lay open beside her, pages soaked in ink and heartbreak. She picked up a pen and began to write, not to Christopher, not to Linda, but to her unborn children. She addressed each one by the name she had given them in secret. Zara, Ife, Dammy, and Junior. He said you were mistakes, she wrote, her tears blotting the ink. But you were the only things I ever wanted. I wanted to be your mother. I begged for you. I would have fought the world to keep you. But I was too weak. That night, Amanda didn't sleep. She just wrote and wrote until the sun rose and her eyes turned empty. The morning after the confrontation felt like walking through an abandoned battlefield. Amanda got up, dressed herself, and moved through the world like a ghost. Her roommates noticed the change. Amanda, are you okay? One asked. She nodded with a smile too calm to be real. Inside her, there was nothing left to shatter. She had cried her last tear. The betrayal by Christopher had wounded her, but Linda's role in it was the final dagger. Her own sister. The girl who once called her role model. The one Amanda helped prepare for jam, who she defended against bullies in secondary school, who she helped pack when she got into university, now wore Amanda's heartbreak like a wedding gown. When Amanda returned home that weekend, the house was buzzing with excitement. Linda was glowing, their mother was crying tears of joy, and their father looked at Amanda like she was invisible. Her mother hugged her. "You'll get your own husband soon, don't worry." Amanda smiled faintly and went to her room. That evening she sat across from Linda for dinner. There was a soft tension in the air, unspoken but heavy. Amanda broke it first. "Do you love him?" Linda looked up, surprised. "Yes," she said after a moment. Amanda nodded. "Did you know what he did to me?" Linda's fork froze. "I didn't want to believe it. I thought you were exaggerating." Amanda laughed softly, bitterly. "I bled for him, Linda. 4 times. I loved him before I even knew what love really meant. He broke me in ways I can't describe. And you stood there and took my place." Linda blinked away tears. "Amanda, I didn't mean to." Amanda stood up. "But you did. You meant to stay with him even after knowing the truth. That's what hurts the most." She walked away, leaving Linda in silence. Amanda realized something then. Betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes it's dressed in silence, in fake smiles, in gold engagement rings on familiar fingers. Amanda went back to school the next day. The world kept spinning, indifferent to her wounds. Her classmates were preparing for exams, planning parties, sharing jokes. Amanda stayed to herself. She didn't eat much. Her journals were now filled with one-word entries. Why? How? When? Pain. Silence. Rage. She stopped calling her parents. She blocked Linda's number. Her professors gave up on calling roll. She began visiting a quiet, isolated area behind the school library, where she could think, plan, reflect. One afternoon she sat there with her journal on her lap and wrote, "They won't get to live happily ever after while I carry the funerals." That day the first crack of vengeance pierced through her grief. Not rage. Not hate. Just cold, determined resolve. Amanda had given love everything. And now she would take something back. Amanda's thoughts grew darker with every passing day. She stopped attending lectures altogether. Her days blurred together in silent mourning and silent fury. When classmates saw her, they whispered, "Isn't that the girl who dated the billionaire?" She didn't care anymore. Her identity was no longer tied to Christopher's name. It was tied to pain, to loss, to the names of the children she'd never know. She began cutting off everything, friends, family, even God. She no longer prayed. Her faith, like her womb, felt barren. She started visiting churches late at night when no one was there, just to sit on empty pews and stare at the cross. "Where were you?" she whispered once. "While I was dying?" No answer ever came. Just silence. Deep, vast silence that mocked her soul. She started collecting things. Pieces that made no sense to others but meant everything to her. A dress she wore on their first date. A photo of the first ultrasound she had secretly printed. A handkerchief with his initials. A music box that played the song he once danced with her to on a rooftop in Accra. She placed each item in a wooden box and labeled it before. It sat under her bed like a coffin of memories. Her journal entries changed. They were no longer sad. They were deliberate, structured, methodical. "He gets married in 2 weeks, she wrote. "They are buying a house together in Lekki. I know the address." She began sketching plans, not like a killer but like a mourner preparing a funeral. A funeral for what was taken from her. Amanda no longer wanted to be saved. She wanted to be heard. Just once. Just once she wanted someone, him, to understand the depth of what he'd done. Then one afternoon she returned to her room to find another envelope. Another wedding card. This time with a handwritten note from Linda, "Please come. Let's start over. You're my sister. I still love you." Amanda stared at the card, then folded it carefully and placed it in her journal. She wrote below it, "This is the last time you'll invite me to anything." That night, Amanda went to the market and bought a white dress. Simple, elegant, haunting. She tried it on in the mirror and stared at her reflection. It didn't look like her anymore. She looked like someone else entirely. Not Amanda the student. Not Amanda the girlfriend. But Amanda the funeral. The bride of death. She sat down, picked up her pen and wrote one last time, "On the day they say, I do, I'll say goodbye. Not because I hate them, but because they buried me first." The official announcement came in the most public way possible. A full-page spread in a national lifestyle magazine. Amanda didn't subscribe to it, but it was everywhere. The school library, vendors on campus, salon waiting areas. She first saw it in the hands of a girl walking past her in the cafeteria. Amanda didn't need to read the name. She recognized the photo instantly. Linda, glowing in a white pre-wedding gown beside Christopher in a cream suit, both smiling like nothing in the world had ever gone wrong. The headline read, "The Billionaire and His Belle, a Love Story Born in Destiny." Amanda's hands trembled. Her eyes scanned the article. It spoke of how Christopher fell in love with a beautiful 18-year-old undergrad, how they kept their love quiet and pure, and how they planned to build a future based on trust and grace. There was no mention of Amanda. No trace of the 3 years she gave him. No sign of the blood on their story. The days that followed were filled with rage wrapped in silence. Amanda didn't scream or throw things. That would have been too easy. Instead she grew still, eerily still. She watched the world celebrate a love story she knew was a lie. Her hostel mates gossiped about the wedding, fantasizing about what it would be like to marry a billionaire. No one knew what Amanda had endured. No one remembered the girl who once wore the same necklace Linda now flaunted on her Instagram feed. Amanda collected the magazines. All of them. She stacked them in her box beneath her bed, next to the ultrasound photos and the white dress she had bought. She didn't cry anymore. Her tears had dried the night she wore the dress in front of her mirror and realized that some funerals don't come with coffins. They come with invitations and chandeliers. The church they chose was one Amanda used to attend with Christopher when he wanted to impress her with spirituality. She knew every corner of it. She knew the back door, the emergency exits, and how the garden overlooked the Lagos Lagoon. She began walking by the venue every evening, sitting across the street, pretending to be a stranger waiting for a bus. Her journal now contained exact times, coordinates, and layouts. She wasn't confused anymore. There was no more inner debate. She knew what she had to do. The wedding was in 5 days. Amanda visited her unborn children's names in her journal one by one, then drew a line through each one. "I'm sorry," she wrote. "Mommy doesn't want anyone else to forget you." She spent the next 2 nights praying, not for forgiveness but for courage. She had nothing left to live for, but she still had something left to say. The night before the wedding, Amanda didn't sleep. She sat on her bed in silence, surrounded by memories. Her journals were neatly packed. Her white dress lay folded beside her. On the floor, she laid out 4 tiny baby socks she had bought online months earlier. One for each child she had lost. Zar, Ife, Bammy, Junior. She placed a small note beside each one. "You were wanted. You were loved. You were real. You are not forgotten." She didn't cry. She only whispered their names over and over like a hymn. Her roommates had long grown used to Amanda's silence, but that night, even they sensed something final in the air. She ignored their questions, locked her door, and continued her quiet ritual. In her journal, she wrote a farewell letter. "If you find this, don't look for a villain. Just read the story. I loved him. I loved them." But love alone was not enough to survive the fire. Before dawn, Amanda took a slow walk across campus. The streets were still, and the air carried a weight she couldn't explain. She walked past the chemistry lab where she once dreamt of curing diseases. Past the cafeteria where she once laughed with friends. Past the library steps where she used to study under the street light when her hostel generator failed. Each place had a memory. Each one haunted. At a small convenience store by the gate, she bought a red ribbon. "For what?" the vendor asked casually. "To wrap a gift," Amanda replied. And it was true, only the gift wasn't for Christopher or Linda. It was for peace. For closure. For her unborn children. She took a kiki to the waterfront and watched the sun rise. The same sun that had once shone on her and Christopher's first kiss. "He said we'd grow old together," she muttered to herself. "He said I was the one." Later that morning, Amanda returned to her room and got dressed. The white dress fit perfectly. Simple but elegant. A haunting echo of the bride she would never become. She brushed her hair, applied light makeup, and looked at herself in the mirror. She looked beautiful. But her eyes were hollow. In her bag, she placed her journal, the baby socks, and the handgun she had hidden inside a shoebox beneath her bed. It wasn't difficult to get. It never is when you ask with enough desperation and cash. She tested its weight in her hand, then whispered, "It ends today." Before she left, she placed the journal on her bed with a note on top. "This is not about revenge. This is about remembrance." Then she walked out for the last time, unnoticed, as the world prepared to celebrate a love built on her grave. Amanda arrived at the church just after noon. The wedding was set for 1 p.m., but the parking lot was already full. She walked calmly, unnoticed, blending in with the early guests. Her white dress turned a few heads, but no one questioned it. People assumed she was part of the event staff or maybe a distant relative. She had rehearsed her path dozens of times. She slipped through a side entrance, avoided the main aisle, and waited in the shadows of the garden. The same garden where Christopher once told her, "You're my forever." She could hear laughter inside. Music, joy. The sound of a world moving on without her. She sat quietly, clutching her handbag like it was a lifeline. Inside was the pistol, wrapped in red ribbon. A gift. Her final gift to the man who said she wasn't good enough to love. From her hiding spot, she watched Linda step out for photos. Her sister looked breathtaking in her wedding gown. Amanda felt a strange numbness watching her. No jealousy, no rage. Just sorrow. Pure deep sorrow. For what could have been. For the future stolen. For the babies lost. Christopher soon joined her. He looked as polished as ever. Confident. Powerful. Untouched by guilt. He leaned in and kissed Linda's forehead. "We're the perfect couple," he said. "No one can ruin this day." Amanda stepped forward slowly, her heels sinking slightly into the grass. "You're wrong," she said softly. Linda turned, her eyes wide. "Amanda?" Christopher's face twisted in confusion. "What are you doing here?" She smiled, unzipping the bag. "I came to give you my blessing." The gun emerged in one swift motion. Guests screamed before she even fired. But Amanda didn't flinch. She aimed with the precision of a woman who had nothing left to lose. One shot to Christopher's chest. He stumbled back, gasping, eyes wide with shock. Linda screamed his name, rushing toward him. Amanda turned the gun on her next. "You took everything from me," she whispered. Linda's eyes pleaded, but Amanda didn't hesitate. Another shot. Then silence. Amanda turned the gun to her own head. Chaos erupted. People rushed forward. But her voice rang out, steady and clear. "This is for Zara. Ife. Dami. Junior." The last sound was the trigger. The world stopped. Screams echoed through the church grounds like a swarm of sirens as Amanda's body fell beside those of Christopher and Linda. Blood painted the once peaceful garden, where moments before wedding photos were being snapped beneath the sunlight. Guests ran in every direction, some screaming in horror, others frozen in place. The soft music that had played from hidden speakers was still on loop, unaware that its melody now serenaded a massacre. A mother fainted. A young flower girl clutched her basket and cried. Cameras meant to capture the joy of a billionaire's wedding now swung around to film a scene out of a tragedy. Within minutes, police sirens wailed in the distance, the blue and red lights dancing against stained white roses and shattered champagne glasses. The garden, once a stage for vows, was now a graveyard of unspoken pain. Emergency responders arrived, but there was little they could do. Amanda had aimed with precision. Christopher was gone by the time paramedics touched him, a hole through the heart he claimed to give to both sisters. Linda, though still breathing, was fading fast. A gunshot to the abdomen had torn through her torso. They rushed her into an ambulance, but the odds were grim. Amanda's body remained still, a strange calmness on her face. Her hands were folded across her chest like she had chosen her end with clarity. Her white dress was soaked in her own blood, blending almost poetically with the fabric, like the wedding she never had was finally etched on her skin. Around her neck, authorities found a silver necklace with a tiny charm shaped like a baby's foot. No one knew yet what it meant. No one asked. She was simply labeled, "Killer Ex-Girlfriend." News traveled fast. Within hours, every media outlet in the country reported the story. "Billionaire and bride shot dead at wedding by ex-lover," blared across headlines. Comment sections exploded. She was mad. She was jealous. These campus girls again. Witchcraft. Only a few questioned the deeper story. Most didn't even know her name. They didn't know Amanda. They hadn't seen her bleed, bury her children in silence, or write goodbye letters on tear-stained pages. The footage captured by phones was replayed endlessly. Amanda stepping forward, Amanda raising the gun, Amanda whispering something before pulling the trigger. The truth was reduced to a 30-second clip. But what no one saw, what the videos didn't capture, was the years of manipulation, abandonment and loss that led her there. The world wanted a villain. Amanda gave them one. But in doing so, she left behind something they couldn't ignore, a shattered fairy tale with blood on its pages. The church grounds were sealed off for days. A sea of white roses turned crimson, and the wedding arch remained collapsed in the corner like the broken dreams it once promised. Inside the church, candles once meant to bless the couple were now lit in mourning. Linda clung to life for 3 more hours at the hospital before she flatlined. Christopher's company released a statement mourning his sudden and tragic death. No mention was made of Amanda. No public sympathy. no acknowledgement of their history. His image was protected like glass, flawless, polished, untouchable. Amanda's name became taboo. News channels labeled her the obsessed ex, the unstable student, the poor village girl who lost her mind. Some speculated she was mentally ill. Others claimed she used juju. The truth, however, lay quietly in the police evidence room, her journals. Amanda's roommates had directed police to her room, where they found her final note atop a neatly placed leather-bound diary. It read, "This is not about hate. It's about truth." Inside the pages, detectives discovered a carefully recorded account of every promise Christopher ever made to her. There were entries written after each abortion, filled with sorrow, guilt, and longing. She named each of her unborn children, gave them birthdays, wrote poems for them. She recorded dates, text messages, medical visits, meticulously, almost clinically. She wrote about how Christopher changed, how he manipulated her, how he began grooming her sister while discarding her. There was no rage in her writing, just pain. Cold, detailed pain. The officers who read it sat in silence. One of them whispered, "This girl wasn't crazy. She was destroyed." Public opinion began to shift, but slowly. When excerpts from her journal were leaked to a popular blogger, the internet erupted again. This time differently. Women shared their own stories of being used, discarded, silenced. "I am Amanda," some wrote, under the trending hashtag Remember Amanda. Survivors of emotional abuse found her journal to be a mirror, a cautionary tale, a cry from the grave. Some still called her evil, a murderer. But others, many others, began to see her not as a monster but as a symbol. Not of revenge, but of what silence and betrayal can do to a fragile soul. Amanda's name was finally spoken, but with it came the question, how many more are out there, buried in silence, mourning in shadows, pushed past the edge? Amanda was buried in a small cemetery outside Kogi, far from the city lights that once reflected her dreams. Her parents held a quiet funeral. No media. No photographers. No one from Christopher's family attended. No one from Linda's. Just a few villagers, a quiet pastor, and 2 classmates who remembered the girl who once smiled the brightest in their chemistry lab. The grave was simple, white headstone, black letters, and a tiny angel carved at the top. The inscription read, "Amanda Okoro. She loved too deeply." And it broke her. The pastor tried to say comforting words, but even he struggled to find scriptures for a girl whose story didn't fit the mold of blessed or favored. Rain fell lightly as her coffin was lowered. A single bird chirped above, then silence again. Amanda was gone, but not forgotten. Back in Lagos, a memorial sprang up in the garden where she died. Someone placed a small cross with 4 paper hearts taped to it, each bearing a name, Zara. Ife. Bami. Jr. It wasn't publicized. No news covered it. But students from her university came in quiet waves, leaving flowers, journals, and candles. Some wept. Some sat for hours, writing letters and placing them in a shoebox marked, "For Amanda." A professor even dedicated her thesis to Amanda, titled, "The Cost of Silence, Love, Power, and the Death of Innocence." Amanda's story began to appear in conversations, uncomfortable, raw, real. She was no longer just the girl who shot a billionaire. She became a face for pain, for betrayal, for the consequences of loving someone who never saw you as human. In her final journal entry, Amanda had written something simple, almost childlike. It read, "If there's another world where babies grow up, I hope mine know I love them. I hope they remember my voice. I hope they know that mommy tried." That entry was engraved into a metal plaque placed beside her grave. Visitors often sat by it, running their fingers over the words. A year later, on what would have been her graduation day, dozens of girls wore white in her memory. They didn't speak. They didn't chant. They just stood quietly in front of the school's gate, holding candles with the words "Remember Amanda" printed across their chests. Amanda may have died in blood, but she left behind a truth so loud the world could no longer ignore it. And in that she finally found her voice. A year after the wedding turned tragedy, Amanda's name remained etched in the hearts of thousands, not because she was infamous, but because she had become a mirror. Her story, once distorted by headlines and shallow judgments, had evolved into a symbol of deeper, silent suffering. Documentaries were made. Think pieces were written. But the most powerful tribute didn't come from the media. It came from the broken, the unheard. Women across Nigeria, students, single mothers, survivors of abuse, began to share their stories, inspired by Amanda's journals. Some wrote letters addressed to her. Others organized healing sessions named Amanda Circles. And quietly, something changed in the culture. People started asking harder questions. About power. About consent. About the way society romanticizes men who break women and silence the aftermath with gifts and gaslighting. Her university, after months of protests and petitions, held a memorial event in her name. For the first time in its history, an auditorium was filled not for celebration, but for confession. Former lecturers who had turned blind eyes to Amanda's decline wept as her story was read aloud. Students lit candles and stood in silence. A professor held up a photo of Amanda on her first day at the university, smiling, hopeful, untouched by the pain that would one day consume her. She was one of ours, the professor said, voice trembling. And we failed her. The university introduced a new counseling and reporting system, and they named it the Amanda Project. And just like that, her story transformed from a tragedy into a tool, a reminder that victims aren't always loud, that the ones suffering the most are often the ones who smile the hardest. Back in Kogi, Amanda's mother visited her grave every Sunday. She would sit on a small stool and talk to her daughter like she had never left. "You were too gentle for this world," she'd whisper, placing fresh flowers on the soil. "But your fire still burns." Her father, once quiet and ashamed, now carried Amanda's journal with him wherever he went. He started speaking at schools and youth events, reading her words to teenage girls, urging them to never mistake manipulation for love. "My daughter died because she believed too much in someone who didn't believe in her," he would say, holding back tears. The final pages of Amanda's journal were published as a book, titled The Girl Who Bled in Silence. It became a national bestseller, not for profit but for purpose. Proceeds went to shelters for young pregnant girls forced into silence. Her pain gave birth to protection. Her death birthed new life. Amanda Okoro was not a hero. She was not a saint. She was a girl. A girl who loved too deeply. A girl who believed promises that were never meant to be kept. A girl who buried her own children while clinging to a man who never saw her humanity. She became what the world made her, a vessel of silence and then an explosion of truth. In the end, her story wasn't about vengeance. It was about voice. And though she died in a garden of blood, her voice now blooms in classrooms, journals, candles, and movements across the nation. Amanda didn't survive, but her truth did. And sometimes that's how the world finally listens. Thank you for watching this video. What did you learn from this story? Drop it in the comments. Please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel Tales by Tochi for more.